Today I want to share with you a strategy, a slight change that we made that helped the business go from a 7 to an 8-figure business. And it helped us to go from a local business that was stuck to a global business that has customers all over the world in dozens and dozens of different countries. This tiny little change can open your business up to a massive amount of growth by getting better customers and getting a lot more of them. So let's talk about how to reposition your business in the minds of more people so that they know who you are, they know the value that you offer, and they know exactly where to find you. The world is truly your oyster. I know that there's a lot of negativity being spoken about in the world at the moment, but stay positive, stay focused on the big picture. You have access to 70% of the world's population who have fast internet. Over 1.8 billion people have English as a fluent language. So you have this unbelievable opportunity to reach people with your business no matter where they are in the world. But in order to do that, you have to reposition your business so that your business is attractive to people no matter where they are in the world. So let's talk about how to position your business to get the maximum number of perfect clients no matter where they are. So in the industrial age, the way that we would position a business is through two things. We would have a business positioned at the intersection of geography and products and services. So for example, I'm actually in a soap factory that used to produce soap. They would always say that they are a soap business in Manchester. That's where we are at the moment. Now you could think about Fleet Street in London was the place to have a newspaper, or Savile Row was the place to do tailoring. Most businesses would tell you their geography and what the product or service was that they sold. That's how they positioned their business all through the industrial age for hundreds of years. But things have changed. So rather than positioning your business around geography and the products and services that you sell, we need to adopt this new positioning. And the new positioning is at the intersection of intellectual property, which is the things that you know, the outcomes you can deliver, the problems that you can solve, and what's called your ICP, your ideal customer persona, the person that gets the most value from that. So let's kind of break these two things down and talk about each in its own category. So intellectual property. This is based upon your experience. This is not what ChatGPT could produce. This is not the standard information. This is your stories, your experiences, your insights, your wisdom that comes from your last 5 to 10 years. The way to think about intellectual property is it's your uniqueness, it's what you offer to the world that very few other people could replicate. I'm not necessarily talking about the legal definition of intellectual property, I'm talking about the concept of intellectual property. This idea that you've got unique experiences that other people would find valuable. So how do we go digging for intellectual property? What we want to do is we want to construct a bit of a timeline of the last 10 years, and we want to have a look for times where you did something special for a certain type of person, you got a remarkable outcome, and you can explain it step by step. So let me give you a couple of examples. So over the period of time between the early 2010s and about 2015, we really went through the process of digitally transforming the business. We went through a lot of transformation, and we had to make the business more scalable. And we invested in a lot of suppliers and a lot of different projects, and some of it worked and some of it didn't work. And at the end of that process, I stopped and I reflected and I thought, what is it that works? What is it that doesn't work? What has actually helped us become scalable? And I drew this little diagram of a house, and I had all these different layers to the house. And I created what was the very first draft of 24 Assets, which became a best-selling book that I wrote. So 24 Assets was me just stopping, pausing, reflecting, and documenting what I had done over the last 5 to 10 years and putting it into a bit of a framework. So I created a framework. I literally wrote it on a notepad like this, and then I sent it to a graphic designer. They came back with a design. I updated it. I made some changes. I put it in front of a few clients. They loved it. They wanted to explain a few things. I changed a few of the words around, and then I did version 2, version 3, version 4. I then ran a little mini workshop around a boardroom table with it, and people really started to resonate with this particular intellectual property. So from there, I then wrote a book about it. I wrote a blog about it. I created some videos about it. We created an online scorecard for the 24 Assets, and it became a very developed piece of intellectual property. So the process or the steps of creating your intellectual property is to think about what are the problems that you know how to solve in a unique way based on your experience. Who would find value in that? How can you explain it step by step? How can you turn that into a framework of some sort? How can you turn it into some content? How can you put it in front of customers and see how they react? And if all that goes well, then you formalize it and document it. You work with a graphic designer, you work with an editor, and you take it through a bit of a process of creating some refined intellectual property. Ultimately, you end up with a clear way of solving a problem or delivering an outcome in a way that is completely unique to you, based on your story, based on your experience. So this is intellectual property. One of the keys to getting this right is making time every single week to pause, reflect, and document. You pause, right? You clear the diary, you reflect what's working, what's not working, what have I done, what do people find valuable? And then you document it. You start with a notepad, you sketch out some drawings, you might do some blogging or some article writing, and then you collate it and compile it to form your intellectual property set. Okay, let's jump over here to the ICP. The ICP is the ideal customer persona. This is the person who gets the most value from the intellectual property, the person who has the most to gain, sees the most value, and would happily pay the most. Right, so this is going to be the ideal customer persona. So you're thinking about this intellectual property and you're thinking about who gets the most value from that intellectual property. So a great example is one of our clients, Ray. He has intellectual property about health and safety and how factories can run more safely. And he knows that that intellectual property could be used in an office environment, but office environments aren't really dangerous. And there are certain easy manufacturing processes that aren't very dangerous, and that's kind of valuable but not super valuable. But then there are manufacturing companies that are very, very dangerous. They deal with all sorts of big machinery and hot stuff and electrical stuff and, you know, chopping sharp blade related stuff. And they get a lot of value from his intellectual property because of the dangers that they face in their work environment. Occupational health and safety intellectual property is extremely valuable because it can save lives. So if he puts his intellectual property in front of an office manager, they're not going to see very much value. They might say, oh, it's worth a couple of $100 a day for you to come in and share that with us. But if he puts it in front of a big, heavy industrial manufacturing plant, they're going to say that's worth $20,000 a day to us because it could save lives and it could really solve big problems that we're facing. So the question is who gets the most value from the intellectual property that you have? Another great example is Esther Perel. Esther Perel is a couples therapist. She's a marriage and relationship expert, and she has intellectual property as to how married couples can reconcile their differences. But she figured out pretty early on that if she puts that in front of multimillionaires and billionaires who are facing a very expensive divorce, they're going to pay a lot more for that than normal regular couples or newlyweds or people who are single. So your intellectual property has a different value depending on who's looking. So what we want to do is we want to position your business at the intersection of this intellectual property and this ideal customer persona. So in the olden days, in the industrial age, we would have said, my business is a plumbing business in Wimbledon, or my business is a consulting firm in London, my business is a printing business in Birmingham, right? We would have said what we do, product and service, with the location. Today, we say, this is the problem that I solve for this type of customer. This is the outcome I can deliver for these types of people. This is the type of transformation that I can do for this type of business, right? So the more we can be clear that our business exists at the intersection of intellectual property and ideal customer persona, we can then begin to run a campaign to position ourselves at that intersection. That's where we want to be there. We want people to think about us and say, I know what you do, right? You're that person who does that thing that is at the intersection of solving this problem for this type of person. That's how we want people to position ourselves. That's how we want to be positioned in the minds of others. Now, out there in the big wide world, there's 8 billion people on the planet. You need to think about the question, how many people currently know that this is what you do, right? So the number for many people might be 0. For some people, it might be 100 people. Some people, it might be 1,000 people. But you say, well, how many people actually know that this is what my business does? If we were to survey all 8 billion people on the earth, how many people would correctly state that your business is at the intersection of this problem that you solve or this outcome and this particular type of person that gets the most value from that? We want that number to radically increase. We want to get that number into the thousands, maybe tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people who understand what it is that you do. Because your business is at the intersection of demand and supply, right? So if you have really high demand and low supply, you're going to make a lot of profit. If you have really high supply and low demand, you're going to make a lot of losses. So you need to have lots of people who know that your business is at this intersection, and you need to have a small constrained supply of what you do, right? You need to be fussy about who you do that for. That's your ideal customer persona, but we need lots of people to know that that is what you do. So your goal is to position your business in the minds of plenty of people who know that that's where your business is positioned. Now, the easiest and fastest way to do this is, rather than positioning your business at that intersection, to position yourself at that intersection. So this is called the key person of influence strategy. Rather than building a business brand, we build a personal brand, a key person of influence brand. Now, why would we want to do that? Wouldn't it be better to just have the business be known? Well, the truth is that people don't pay much attention to what businesses say these days. They pay attention to what people say. We're hardwired to respond to people as opposed to business brands. In fact, LinkedIn did some research into this, and what they found is that a business brand versus a personal brand has a 20x difference. So if you were to start a personal brand and a business brand on the exact same day and post the exact same content at the exact same time, by the time the business brand gets to 1,000 followers, the personal brand will be close to 20,000 followers. The difference is 20 to 1. So if you want to get 20 times more cut through, 20 times more people who know where your business is positioned, use your personal brand rather than your business brand. We can see this in plenty of examples. We know that one footballer, Cristiano Ronaldo, has more followers than every single football club combined. We know that one Kardashian has more followers than every single cosmetics brand combined, right? People respond to people much more than they respond to brands. So you want to position yourself as the key person of influence who is the source of the intellectual property and who is focused on this ideal customer persona and is telling the story of what can happen at the intersection of that intellectual property with that type of person. And we call that a campaign. It's a campaign to position you as a key person of influence at the intersection of your intellectual property and the ideal customer persona. And if you can do that, the world really opens up and people start to discover who you are. They start to discover your value, and you end up signing up customers from all over the world at a really great price. So have a little bit of a think today about how you could use that in your business, how you could reposition your business in the minds of more people. I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. If you get a chance, come and join me on a live workshop where we can discuss this in more detail. We can interact, we can have Q&A. There'll be a link somewhere around here. Give this channel a like and a subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next week.